My 7-year-old son asked, "Do all families do this? Do all families do this, Mommy?" The question hit me like ice water as I watched my 7-year-old son Dylan pick at his grilled cheese sandwich, his small shoulders hunched with a weight no child should carry. We were sitting at our kitchen table on a Tuesday evening in March, the golden hour light streaming through our windows making everything look deceptively peaceful. "Do what, sweetheart?" I asked, though something in his tone made my stomach clench. "Make their daddies live in tiny places and eat McDonald's every day because they don't have money for real food." His voice was barely above a whisper, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Tommy's dad says all divorced dads are poor because the mommies take everything." I set down my coffee mug so hard it rattled against the saucer. Tommy. My ex-husband Tom Bradley, who was supposed to pick Dylan up in 3 hours for his weekend visit. Tom, who paid exactly $847 in child support each month, court-ordered and automatically deducted from what I knew was a 6-figure salary at Morrison & Associates. "Dylan, look at me." I kept my voice gentle even as rage built in my chest. "Why do you think Daddy doesn't have money for real food?" His blue eyes, so much like Tom's it sometimes hurt to look at them, finally met mine. "Because he showed me his sad little apartment and said he can only buy Happy Meals now because you took our house and all his money when you got divorced. He said that's just how it works when mommies and daddies split up." This sad little apartment. I'd never seen where Tom lived now, but Dylan had described it to me before, a cramped studio with a futon, a tiny TV, and a mini fridge stocked only with leftover McDonald's bags. I'd felt a twinge of guilt each time, wondering if maybe I should reduce the child support request. Tom had always been good with money, but divorces were expensive, and maybe he really was struggling. But now, looking at my son's face, the guilt written across his features like he was personally responsible for his father's supposed poverty, something clicked into place. This wasn't about money. This was about control. "Sweetheart, is this why you've been upset after your weekends with Daddy? Is this why you asked me last month if we could give him some of our grocery money?" Dylan nodded, a single tear sliding down his cheek. "Mrs. Peterson says I've been distracted at school, but I can't stop thinking about Daddy being hungry. Sometimes I save half my lunch to bring to him, but then I forget and eat it anyway, and that makes me feel really bad." My heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of a breath, this time lined with steel. Tom wasn't just manipulating me through our son, he was systematically destroying Dylan's sense of security and self-worth. Making a 7-year-old feel responsible for his father's living situation was psychological warfare, and I was done playing defense. "Dylan, I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said, reaching across the table to take his small hands in mine. "None of this is your fault. Not Daddy's apartment, not his food, not the divorce. Do you understand me?" He nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. Tom had been weaving this narrative for months, and it would take more than words to undo the damage. I glanced at the clock, 5:47 p.m. Tom would be here at 8:30 sharp, he was always punctual for pickup, I'd give him that. Time to do some research. After Dylan went upstairs to pack his overnight bag, I grabbed my laptop and started digging. If Tom was playing games, I needed to know exactly what kind. Morrison & Associates website still listed him as senior project manager. According to Glassdoor, that position averaged $89,000 annually, but Tom had been there 8 years. His salary was likely closer to $110,000, maybe more. The $847 monthly child support payment suddenly felt like loose change he was tossing my way. I pulled up the county property records next. Nothing under his name since our house sold 18 months ago. Then I tried rental listings, thinking maybe I could find a sad little studio apartment Dylan kept describing. That's when I found something interesting. A Google search for Thomas Bradley Morrison Associates pulled up his LinkedIn profile, but also something else, a real estate article from 2 months ago. Local tech companies embrace remote work luxury. There was a photo of a gorgeous downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows, and the caption read, "Morrison & Associates Tom Bradley works from his newly renovated workspace overlooking River District." My hand started shaking as I clicked through to the full article. The loft was stunning, exposed brick, modern fixtures, a kitchen that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The article mentioned it was a 1,200 square foot space in the prestigious Meridian building, where units typically rented for $3,500 monthly. This was not the cramped studio with a futon that my son had described. I screenshot everything, then kept digging. Social media had always been Tom's weakness, he loved showing off, which is partly what destroyed our marriage. His Facebook was locked down now, but Instagram was a goldmine. His latest posts were generic enough, coffee cups, sunset photos, nothing identifying. But I scrolled back further, to right after our divorce was finalized. There. November 15th. A photo of an expensive-looking whiskey bottle with the caption, "New place, new beginnings." In the background, barely visible, was the edge of what looked like a granite countertop and stainless steel appliances. November 23rd, Thanksgiving for one, but grateful for this view. The photo showed a professionally plated dinner with those same floor-to-ceiling windows from the real estate article visible behind it. December 8th, working late has its perks. A laptop set up on what was clearly a high-end desk, with that distinctive exposed brick wall in the background. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, running a few minutes early. "Be there at 8:15. I looked at the clock, 7:58 p.m. Shit. I screenshot his Instagram post and emailed everything to myself, then cleared my browser history out of habit. The front door chime rang just as I was closing my laptop. Dylan thundered down the stairs with his backpack, and I forced a smile as I opened the door. Tom stood there looking exactly like he always did, well-groomed, wearing a jacket that probably cost $400, designer jeans, expensive sneakers. For a man supposedly living on McDonald's scraps, he sure dressed well. "Hey buddy." Tom's face lit up as Dylan launched himself into his arms. "Ready for our weekend?" "Yeah. Daddy, are you feeling better?" "Mommy says it's not my fault you don't have much money." I watched Tom's expression carefully. There was the briefest flicker, surprise, maybe annoyance, before he rearranged his features into that wounded look I'd grown to hate during our marriage. "Oh sweetheart, did Mommy and you talk about that?" Tom's voice carried just the right note of brave sadness. "I don't want you worrying about grown-up stuff." "But I do worry," Dylan said, his voice small. "I want to help." Tom's eyes met mine over Dylan's head, and I saw something cold and calculating there. We'll figure it out together, buddy. We always do, right? I stood in the doorway watching Tom load Dylan into his Honda Civic, another detail that didn't add up. Tom had always been a car guy, obsessed with his BMW M3 that he'd baited like a second child. When we divorced, he'd fought harder to keep that car than he had to keep me. Yet here he was, driving what looked like a 15-year-old sedan with a dent in the rear bumper. The performance was flawless, I had to admit. Even down to the sad, rattling exhaust as he pulled away from my curb. But I'd seen behind the curtain now, and I wasn't about to let this continue. After they left, I called my sister Jenny. She answered on the second ring, already laughing at something her husband was saying in the background. Sarah. What's up? You sound weird. I need a favor, and it's going to sound crazy. My favorite kind. Hit me. I explained everything, Dylan's guilt, Tom's supposed poverty, the real estate article, the Instagram posts. Jenny listened without interrupting, which meant she was taking this seriously. That manipulative piece of shit, she finally said. What do you need? Information. You still work downtown, right? Near River District? 2 blocks away. The Meridian building is the tall glass one with the fancy coffee shop on the ground floor. I walk past it every day on lunch break. Can you check something for me tomorrow? See if there's a Thomas Bradley on the resident directory? Already texting my friend Marcus who works security there. Give me 10 minutes. While I waited, I started a new document on my laptop, Dylan, behavioral changes, and began documenting everything I could remember. The guilt about his lunch money. His teacher Mrs. Peterson's comments about distraction and declining grades. The way he'd started hoarding snacks in his room, like he was preparing for scarcity. The questions about why mommy got to keep the nice house while daddy had to live somewhere sad. Jenny called back at 9:47 p.m. Unit 1847. Thomas Bradley, lease started November 1st, rent is $3,800 monthly, and Marcus says the guy drives a blue BMW that he parks in the premium garage spots. My hands clenched around the phone. The BMW? Marcus knows cars. Says it's an M3, maybe 2019 or 2020. Definitely not cheap. So Tom still had his precious car, he just wasn't letting Dylan see it. The level of premeditation in this deception was staggering. There's more, Jenny continued. Marcus says the guy specifically requested that his unit number not be listed on the main lobby directory. Paid extra for privacy. Why would someone do that? Marcus deals with a lot of divorced guys who don't want their ex-wives knowing where they live. But this seems different. He said Bradley was very specific about having 2 different pickup locations, the main lobby and the service entrance in the parking garage. 2 different entrances. Of course. Tom could bring Dylan through the service entrance to some friend's actual studio apartment, or even a rented room he was using as a prop. Meanwhile, his real life continued 18 floors up with granite countertops and river views. Jenny, I need another favor. Can you and Mike drive by there tomorrow around 7 p.m.? Dylan gets dropped off at 8:30 Sunday nights, so Tom should be heading home around then. You want us to follow him? I want you to see which entrance he uses when he thinks no one is watching. Jenny was quiet for a moment. Sarah, what are you planning? I looked at the stack of Dylan's artwork on my counter, drawings of stick figures where the daddy figure was always smaller than everyone else, living in tiny squares while the mommy and child lived in big houses. In his latest drawing from last week, he'd colored himself gray and standing between the 2 houses, arms stretched out like he was trying to bridge an impossible gap. I'm planning to stop letting my ex-husband use our son as an emotional weapon, I said. And I'm going to make sure the family court sees exactly what kind of man they awarded joint custody to. Jenny texted me Saturday morning at 11:43 a.m., blue BMW M3, premium parking spot 47B. Used main lobby entrance with takeout bags from Enzo's. Enzo's. The Italian place where Tom used to take me for anniversaries, where entrees started at $45. So much for his McDonald's poverty narrative. I was still processing this when my phone rang. Dylan's contact photo, a gap-toothed grin from last summer, filled the screen. Mommy? His voice was small, worried. Can I come home early? My heart clenched. What's wrong, sweetheart? Daddy's friend Marcus is here, and they're talking about grown-up stuff that makes me feel scared. Daddy keeps saying things about you and money and how you're trying to take me away from him forever. Marcus. The security guard from the Meridian building. My blood went cold. Where are you right now, Dylan? In the bathroom at Daddy's friend's house. I told them I had to pee, but I really just wanted to call you. Daddy doesn't know I have the emergency phone with me. The emergency phone, a basic flip phone I'd hidden in Dylan's backpack after a weekend last month when Tom had been unreachable for 6 hours. Technically against our custody agreement, but I'd been more worried about Dylan's safety than Tom's rules. Can you tell me what Daddy and his friend are talking about? They keep saying your name and talking about judges and paperwork. Marcus said something about making sure I don't see anything I shouldn't see. Mommy, what does that mean? They knew. Somehow, Tom had figured out that I was investigating him. Dylan, listen to me carefully. I want you to stay where you are for just a minute, okay? Don't hang up. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the family court website, navigating to the emergency custody modification section. My hands were shaking as I started filling out the electronic form. Mommy, are you still there? I'm here, baby. Dylan, I need you to be very brave right now. Can you do that for me? I think so. I want you to ask Daddy to take you home because you don't feel good. Tell him your tummy hurts and you miss your own bed. Don't mention that you called me, okay? But what if he says no? What if he gets mad? The desperation in his voice broke my heart. Then you tell him you're going to throw up and you need to go home right now. Can you do that? Okay, Mommy. The line went quiet, but he didn't hang up. I could hear muffled voices through the bathroom door, Tom's voice rising, then another man's voice trying to calm him down. Then Dylan was back. Daddy says we can't leave yet because he has important business to finish. He said maybe later tonight. Later tonight meant 8:30 p.m., when Tom would drop Dylan off regardless. 3 more hours of my 7-year-old listening to his father and some stranger discuss legal strategies to keep manipulating him. Dylan, where exactly are you right now? What's the address? I don't know. We drove for a long time after we left Daddy's sad apartment. This place is really nice though. It has a big TV and fancy kitchen. But Mommy, I'm confused. If Daddy doesn't have money, why does his friend Marcus have such a nice house? My suspicions crystallized into certainty. Tom was rotating locations, probably using Marcus's actual apartment as the poverty set piece while keeping Dylan away from his real home. But Dylan was starting to notice the inconsistencies. Sweetheart, can you see anything outside the bathroom window? Any street signs or store names? There's a big glass building across the street with a coffee shop on the bottom. It says Meridian something. Tom was at his own building. The sad apartment Dylan had been describing was probably Marcus's actual unit, or maybe even a vacant one Marcus had access to. Tom had been orchestrating this entire deception with inside help. Dylan, I need you to hang up now and put the phone back where you hid it. But if anything scary happens, if Daddy or Marcus say anything that makes you feel unsafe, you call me right back, okay? Okay, Mommy. I love you. I love you too, baby. The line went dead, and I immediately called my lawyer. My lawyer Diane Martinez answered on the 4th ring, sounding harried. Sarah, I'm in the middle of a Saturday family crisis. Can this wait until? Tom's been psychologically manipulating Dylan, and I have proof. I need an emergency custody hearing. The line went quiet. Then, I'm listening. I rapid-fired everything, the fake poverty story, the real estate article, the Meridian building discovery, Dylan's phone call from what was clearly Tom's actual neighborhood. Diane took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions that made me realize how insane this all sounded. The Instagram photos alone aren't enough, she said finally. We need concrete evidence that he's deliberately deceiving Dylan about his living situation. And we need to prove it's causing psychological harm. What about Dylan's declining grades? His teachers documented his behavioral changes. That helps establish harm, but family court judges see a lot of kids struggling with divorce adjustments. We need to prove Tom's actions are deliberate and malicious, not just poor judgment. Poor judgment. I wanted to scream. Diane, he's making a 7-year-old feel responsible for his father's fake financial struggles. Dylan's been saving his lunch money. I know. I know it's awful. But we need more than your word against Tom's. Can you get Dylan to describe the apartment inconsistencies on record? You want me to interrogate my traumatized child? I want us to build a case that protects him long-term instead of just this weekend. She was right, but the lawyer logic felt cold when my son was sitting in a bathroom, scared and confused. What about the security guard helping him? That's conspiracy, right? It's unethical as hell, but not illegal unless Marcus is falsifying official records. Look, here's what we can do immediately. File for an emergency psychological evaluation. If a court-appointed therapist determines Dylan's being emotionally manipulated, we have grounds for supervised visitation while we investigate further. How long does that take? Emergency filing? I can have paperwork submitted by Monday morning. But Sarah, once we do this, Tom's going to know you're coming for him. He'll either clean up his act completely, or what? Or he'll escalate. Men like Tom don't like being exposed. Make sure you document everything from here forward. After hanging up, I started a voice memo on my phone, Saturday, March 15th, 2:47 p.m. Dylan called from bathroom, scared, mentioned Tom discussing legal strategies with Marcus from Meridian building security. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Tom's Honda Civic in my driveway and felt my stomach drop. It was only 3 p.m., Dylan wasn't supposed to be back for 5.5 hours. Tom stood on my front step holding Dylan's hand, wearing that fake concerned expression I'd grown to despise. Dylan looked pale and wouldn't meet my eyes. Hey Sarah, sorry to interrupt your Saturday, but Dylan started feeling sick. Stomach bug, I think. I knelt down to Dylan's level. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he'd been crying. Hey sweetheart, what's wrong? My tummy really hurts, Mommy. I just want to go to my room. Tom's grip on Dylan's shoulder tightened slightly, a gesture that probably looked protective to anyone watching, but I caught Dylan's small wince. Well, these things happen, Tom continued smoothly. Kids pick up bugs at school. I figured he'd be more comfortable here with his own bed, his own bathroom. He emphasized the word own just slightly, a subtle reminder of the narrative he'd been feeding Dylan. That was thoughtful of you, I managed, standing back up and reaching for Dylan's overnight bag. Did he eat anything unusual today? Just McDonald's for lunch. Same as always. Tom's smile didn't reach his eyes. You know how it is, limited options on my budget. The performance continued even now, even when he was supposedly being considerate. Dylan was standing right there, absorbing every word. Well, thank you for bringing him home early. I'm sure he'll feel better after some rest. Actually, Sarah, could I talk to you privately for just a minute? About Dylan's concerns lately? Dylan's head snapped up, sudden panic in his expression. I think Dylan should go inside first, I said firmly. Sweetheart, why don't you go get in your pajamas? I'll be right behind you. Dylan hesitated, looking between us like he was afraid of what might happen if he left us alone. Go ahead, buddy, Tom said gently. Daddy just needs to talk to Mommy about grown-up stuff for 1 minute. The words were kind, but something in Tom's tone made Dylan move quickly toward the house. As soon as the front door closed behind him, Tom's entire demeanor shifted. So, he said quietly, stepping closer to me. Interesting coincidence that Dylan suddenly got sick right after Marcus mentioned seeing some woman asking questions about me around the building. The blood drained from my face, but I forced myself to stay calm. I have no idea what you're talking about, Tom. Don't you? His voice was soft, almost conversational, but there was steel underneath. Marcus said a brunette woman about your height was in the Meridian lobby yesterday, asking about residents. Claimed to be looking for her friend Tom but couldn't remember his last name or unit number. Shit. I hadn't asked Jenny to be that direct, but apparently she'd taken initiative. Even if that's true, what does it have to do with Dylan being sick? Tom stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of his expensive cologne, definitely not something a man surviving on McDonald's would be wearing. Here's what I think happened. I think you've been playing detective, and somehow Dylan overheard something that upset him. Kids are perceptive, Sarah. They pick up on their mother's paranoia. Paranoia? The word came out sharper than I intended. Is it paranoia to notice that our son has been carrying guilt about your living situation? That his grades are dropping because he's worried about you being hungry? Dylan's always been sensitive. The divorce was hard on him, harder than it needed to be. Tom's eyes never left mine. But kids adapt when both parents work together. When one parent isn't poisoning the well with suspicions and investigations. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. Tom's eyes flicked to my pocket, then back to my face. You know what's interesting about the Meridian building? Tom continued. Great security system. Cameras everywhere. I bet if someone wanted to, they could pull footage from yesterday afternoon. See exactly who was asking questions about residents. The threat was clear. He had resources I didn't, money, connections, and now evidence of what could be spun as harassment. Are you threatening me, Tom? I'm trying to protect our son from unnecessary drama. He glanced toward the house, where Dylan was probably listening from his bedroom window. Kids need stability, Sarah. They need to trust both their parents. When you go chasing conspiracy theories instead of accepting that sometimes divorce means everyone makes sacrifices. Sacrifices. I couldn't help myself. Is that what you call your $3,800 a month loft? A sacrifice? The words hung in the air between us. Tom's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, a calculation, like he was adjusting his strategy in real time. I see, he said finally. So this isn't about Dylan's well-being at all. This is about money. You think I'm hiding assets. This is about you lying to our son. Making him feel responsible for. For what? For the natural consequences of divorce? Tom's voice rose slightly, then dropped back to that dangerous quiet tone. Dylan knows I love him. He knows I'm doing my best with what I have left after child support, after legal fees, after starting over. Your best involves a BMW M3? Tom smiled then, and it chilled me. You've been busy. I'm impressed. But here's the thing, Sarah, even if everything you think you've discovered is true, what exactly are you planning to do about it? Take me back to court? Accuse me of, what, exactly? Living within my means? Shielding Dylan from adult financial complexities? My phone buzzed again. Then again. Sounds like someone's trying to reach you, Tom observed. Emergency? I pulled out my phone, keeping one eye on Tom. 3 texts from Jenny. Crisis. Marcus called building management. They're reviewing security footage from yesterday. Tom knows we were there. Get Dylan safe. Tom was watching my face as I read, and his smile widened. Bad news? Before I could answer, Dylan's voice came from the front door. Mommy? I threw up. I think I need you. Tom and I both turned toward the house. Dylan stood in the doorway, his face genuinely pale now, pajama shirt clutched in his hands. Of course, sweetheart. I'm coming right now. I started toward the door, then stopped and turned back to Tom. This conversation isn't over. No, Tom agreed pleasantly. I don't think it is. But Sarah? Next time you want to know something about my life, just ask. All this sneaking around, it's not a good look. Especially when it starts affecting Dylan's emotional state. He was already walking back to his Honda Civic, leaving me standing in my own driveway feeling like I'd just been outmaneuvered by a master. But as I watched him drive away, I noticed something that gave me the first spark of hope I'd felt all day. The Honda's license plate was a temporary tag, and it was about to expire. Inside, I helped Dylan clean up and get him settled with ginger ale and crackers. His stomach bug seemed to disappear the moment Tom left, which told me everything I needed to know about what had really happened during their weekend. Mommy, Dylan said quietly as I tucked him into my bed so I could keep an eye on him. Daddy's friend Marcus said some scary things. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to keep my voice calm. What kind of scary things, sweetheart? He said that sometimes mommies try to take children away from their daddies forever, and that I should tell him if you ever asked me questions about where daddy lives or what we do together. Dylan's blue eyes were wide with worry. Am I supposed to tell Marcus things about you? The manipulation was even worse than I thought. They were trying to turn Dylan into a spy against his own mother. No, baby. You never have to report to anyone about our family. That's not how families work. I smoothed his hair back. Did Marcus or Daddy ask you to keep secrets from me? Dylan nodded reluctantly. Marcus said grown-ups sometimes have to keep secrets to protect children from scary legal stuff. But Mommy, I don't like secrets. They make my tummy hurt for real. I spent the next hour just holding Dylan while he napped, my mind racing through options. Tom had outplayed me today, but he'd also revealed something crucial. He was scared enough of discovery to involve Marcus directly. That suggested the deception was even bigger than I'd realized. At 6 p.m., I called my sister back. Sarah, thank God. I was about to drive over there myself. Jenny sounded panicked. Marcus called the building manager and reported me for suspicious activity. Apparently asking about a resident violates some privacy policy. Tom threatened me with security footage. He knows we're investigating him. Shit. I'm sorry, I should have been more subtle. No, this actually helps. His reaction confirms we're onto something big. I glanced toward the bedroom where Dylan was finally sleeping peacefully. Jenny, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. Crazier than stalking your ex-husband's building? I need you to rent a car tomorrow. Something Dylan wouldn't recognize. And I need you to follow Tom when he leaves work. Jenny was quiet for a moment. Sarah, if he's already suspicious. He's getting sloppy because he's scared. That temporary license plate on the Honda? I looked it up. It expires Tuesday. Which means either he just bought that car as a prop, or he's been driving illegally. Either way, he's going to have to deal with it soon. What do you think you'll find? I think Tom has a whole second life Dylan's never seen. The BMW, the loft, maybe even a girlfriend. And I think he's been so careful to keep those worlds separate that he's created vulnerabilities. Monday morning brought the first real break in the case. Diane called at 8:47 a.m. with news. Emergency psychological evaluation approved. Dr. Rebecca Chen, child psychologist, can see Dylan Wednesday afternoon. She specializes in parental alienation cases. That fast? Judge Morrison has zero tolerance for emotional manipulation of children. Plus, Tom's lawyer made a mistake. They filed a counter-motion claiming you're experiencing post-divorce paranoia and making Dylan anxious with unfounded accusations. They basically admitted something's happening. I felt a surge of hope. So they're taking this seriously? Dead seriously. But Sarah, there's something else. Tom's requesting an immediate change to supervised visits, with him supervising your time with Dylan. He's claiming your erratic behavior this weekend proves you're becoming unstable. The hope curdled into dread. He's trying to flip this on me. It's a classic move. Accuse the accuser. But it's also dangerous for him, because now the court's going to scrutinize both of you under a microscope. Diane paused. Whatever evidence you're gathering, get it fast. We have a hearing Friday morning, and Judge Morrison's going to want concrete proof, not suspicions. Friday. 4 days to build a case that could either save Dylan from years of psychological manipulation or lose him to Tom's superior resources and legal maneuvering. I looked at my son eating breakfast, humming softly to himself for the first time in months, and knew I'd do whatever it took. Even if it meant taking risks that scared me. Tuesday afternoon, I was picking Dylan up from school when Mrs. Peterson approached me with that careful expression teachers get when they're about to deliver bad news. Mrs. Bradley, could I speak with you privately for a moment? Dylan ran ahead to the playground, giving us space to talk. Mrs. Peterson pulled out a folder from her bag. Dylan had an interesting conversation with our school counselor today. He asked Mr. Rodriguez if it was illegal for children to lie to judges. She handed me a drawing Dylan had made during art class. He also drew this. The picture showed 3 houses. One large house labeled Mommy's house in green crayon. One tiny house labeled Daddy's sad house in gray. And a third house, much larger than the first 2, labeled Daddy's secret house in red crayon with question marks all around it. My hand started shaking. What exactly did Dylan tell Mr. Rodriguez? He said he was confused because his daddy has 2 different houses, but he's only supposed to know about one of them. He wanted to know if he'd get in trouble for telling a judge about the house he's not supposed to know about. The implications hit me like a truck. Dylan had figured it out on his own. Somehow, during that weekend visit, he'd seen enough to realize Tom was living a double life. Mrs. Peterson, has Dylan seemed different since yesterday? Actually, yes. He's been much calmer, less distracted. Like a weight's been lifted off his shoulders. But he also keeps asking questions about truth-telling and secrets. She lowered her voice. Mrs. Bradley, I've been teaching for 15 years. I've seen a lot of divorce situations. This feels different. I carefully folded Dylan's drawing and put it in my purse. Different how? Most kids in divorce situations are sad, angry, confused, normal responses to a difficult situation. But Dylan's been carrying guilt that seems way too heavy for a 7-year-old. Like he thinks he's responsible for adult problems. Mrs. Peterson glanced toward the playground where Dylan was pushing another kid on the swings. Yesterday was the first day in 2 months I've seen him genuinely laugh. That evening, while Dylan was in the bath, I called Jenny with an update. He saw the real apartment, she said immediately after I finished explaining. That's the only explanation. Something went wrong with Tom's setup. But how? Tom's been so careful about keeping the 2 worlds separate. Maybe too careful. Remember, Marcus got spooked when I showed up asking questions. What if they made a mistake trying to avoid detection? My phone beeped with an incoming call. Tom's number. Jenny, I have to go. Tom's calling. I answered on the 4th ring, trying to sound casual. Hi Tom, what's up? We need to talk. Tonight. After Dylan goes to bed. His voice was tight, controlled. There seems to be some confusion about our conversation yesterday. What kind of confusion? The kind that requires clarification before it becomes a bigger problem. I'll be over at 9 p.m. The line went dead before I could respond. At exactly 9 p.m., Tom's Honda pulled into my driveway. But this time, I was ready. I'd set my phone to record and positioned my laptop to capture audio from the living room. If Tom wanted to play games, I'd document every move. He knocked softly, mindful that Dylan was sleeping upstairs. When I opened the door, Tom looked different, more polished than he had on Saturday. His clothes were expensive again, and he was carrying a manila folder. Sarah, we need to clear the air about some misunderstandings. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. It seems Dylan's been asking some concerning questions at school today. My blood went cold. How do you know what Dylan discussed at school? Tom smiled, and I realized I'd walked into another trap. Marcus has a daughter in Dylan's class. These things get around. Marcus's daughter. Of course. Tom had surveillance everywhere, and I'd been playing checkers while he played chess. Let's sit down, Tom continued, settling onto my couch like he owned the place. We need to discuss what's best for Dylan moving forward. Tom opened the manila folder and spread several documents across my coffee table like he was presenting evidence in a courtroom. I recognized legal letterhead, official seals, what looked like psychological evaluation forms. I've been doing some research too, he said calmly. Did you know that parental alienation is considered a form of child abuse in family court? Making false accusations about a co-parent's living situation, encouraging a child to spy or gather information, coaching them to lie to authority figures. My mouth went dry. I haven't coached Dylan to do anything. Haven't you? Tom slid a document toward me. This is a statement from Dr. Michael Reeves, child psychologist. He specializes in cases where one parent manipulates a child's perceptions to gain custody advantages. Very expensive consultation, but worth every penny. I glanced at the letterhead without touching the paper. You had Dylan evaluated without my consent? I had myself evaluated, actually. Dr. Reeves reviewed Dylan's recent behavioral changes and concluded they're consistent with a child being pressured to provide information about one parent to the other. Tom's voice remained conversational, but his eyes were cold. Apparently, when children start asking school counselors about lying to judges, it raises red flags about parental coaching. The room felt like it was spinning. Tom had somehow turned Dylan's innocent questions into evidence against me. Dylan asked those questions because he's confused about your living situation, not because someone's been filling his head with ideas about secret houses and financial impropriety. Tom pulled out another document. This is interesting too, a complaint filed with Meridian Building Management about harassment. Seems a woman matching your sister's description has been asking inappropriate questions about residents, taking photos, following people. Jenny had taken photos? She hadn't mentioned that. Tom, whatever you think you know. I know enough. He leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah. You're going to withdraw your emergency custody petition. You're going to stop investigating my private life. And you're going to get Dylan into counseling with Dr. Reeves to address the anxiety you've been causing him. The anxiety I've been causing? My voice cracked with disbelief. You're the one making him feel guilty about your fake poverty. Tom's expression hardened. Fake poverty? Sarah, I pay $847 a month in child support, plus Dylan's health insurance, plus half his school expenses. That's nearly $1,200 monthly. Add in rent, food, utilities, car payments. He gestured around my living room. Meanwhile, you got the house equity, spousal support for 2 years, and now you want to paint me as the villain for living modestly? The math sounded reasonable when he laid it out like that. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe I had misinterpreted the Instagram photos, jumped to conclusions about the real estate article. Then I remembered Dylan's drawing. The secret house with question marks. If you're living so modestly, why does Dylan think you have a secret house? Tom's composure slipped for just a second, a flash of genuine surprise before he recovered. Kids have active imaginations, especially when they're being asked leading questions. Dylan probably overheard me talking to Marcus about his apartment and got confused. Marcus's apartment? Marcus has been a good friend during a difficult time. Sometimes Dylan and I visit him, watch TV, order dinner. Is that a crime? Tom started gathering his documents. But I can see how an unstable co-parent might twist innocent friendship into some kind of conspiracy. He was smooth, I'd give him that. Every accusation deflected, every piece of evidence reframed. But something in his explanation felt rehearsed, like he'd been preparing for this exact conversation. There's one more thing, Tom said, standing to leave. I filed for emergency supervised visitation, your visits with Dylan, not mine. Judge Morrison will be very interested in how you've been using our son to gather information about my personal life. My heart stopped. You can't be serious. Dylan deserves protection from parental manipulation. If you really care about his well-being instead of just winning some imaginary game, you'll agree to the supervision voluntarily. Tom headed toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Sarah? That recording app you started when I arrived? In Illinois, recording someone without consent is a felony. Just thought you should know. The front door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me staring at my phone in horror. He'd known about the recording from the moment he walked in. The next morning brought a knock at my door at 7:15 a.m. too early for social visits, too official for good news. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a navy blazer holding a clipboard and a man in a sheriff's deputy uniform standing slightly behind her. My hands shook as I opened the door. Can I help you? Sarah Bradley? I'm Amanda Chen from Child Protective Services. This is Deputy Martinez. We need to speak with you about Dylan Bradley. The world tilted sideways. CPS? What's this about? May we come in? We've received a report of potential emotional abuse and parental alienation. We need to conduct a welfare check. Behind them, I spotted Tom's Honda Civic parked across the street. He wasn't in it, but the message was clear. He was watching, waiting to see how this played out. Dylan's getting ready for school, I managed, stepping aside to let them in. He's upstairs brushing his teeth. Amanda Chen had kind eyes but a professional demeanor that made my stomach clench. Mrs. Bradley, we understand you've been coaching your son to gather information about his father's living situation and encouraging him to lie to school officials about family matters. That's not. I never. I took a breath, trying to think clearly. Who made this report? That's confidential, but I can tell you it came from someone with direct knowledge of the child's statements. She glanced around my living room, taking notes. We also understand you've been engaging in harassment behavior toward your ex-husband, including unauthorized surveillance and property intrusion. Tom had beaten me to the punch. While I'd been gathering evidence, he'd been building a case that painted me as the unstable aggressor. Can I see the complaint? Deputy Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, we're also here to inform you that there's been a motion filed for emergency custody modification. You'll need to appear in family court tomorrow at 2 p.m. Tomorrow. Not Friday as Diane had said. Tom had accelerated the timeline. I have a lawyer. I need to call. Mommy? Dylan's voice drifted from the top of the stairs. Who's here? Amanda Chen looked up. Is that Dylan? We'd like to speak with him privately, if that's okay. Everything was happening too fast. He needs to get to school. Can't this wait until? I'm afraid not. This will only take a few minutes. Amanda's tone was gentle but firm. Dylan, would you come down here, sweetheart? Dylan appeared on the stairs in his school clothes, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking confused and worried. His eyes moved between the strangers and me, trying to understand why official-looking people were in our living room before 8 a.m. Am I in trouble? He asked in a small voice. Not at all, honey, Amanda said with a reassuring smile. We just want to ask you a few questions about how you're feeling lately. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? Dylan looked at me with panic in his eyes. Can Mommy stay with me? Actually, it's better if we talk alone first. Just for a few minutes. Amanda stood up. Maybe we could use the kitchen? I watched helplessly as they led my son away, Deputy Martinez positioning himself where he could observe both conversations. This was Tom's masterpiece, using Dylan's innocent questions about truth-telling as evidence that I'd been coaching him to lie. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop fighting this. It's better for everyone. Tom. He'd gotten a burner phone, probably anticipating that I'd block his regular number after last night. The fact that he was texting during a CPS visit told me he'd orchestrated this entire scene. I could hear Amanda's voice from the kitchen, gentle but probing. Dylan, have you been feeling worried about anything lately? Sometimes grown-ups ask children to keep secrets or answer questions about other grown-ups. My son's voice, confused and scared. I don't like secrets. They make my tummy hurt. But I don't know which things I'm supposed to tell and which things I'm not supposed to tell. What kind of things aren't you supposed to tell? A long pause. Then Dylan's voice, barely audible, about Daddy's real house. Marcus said it was our secret, but then Daddy got mad when I drew a picture of it. Amanda's voice sharpened with interest. Tell me about Daddy's real house. I gripped my phone tighter, wanting to burst into the kitchen and explain, but knowing that any interference would only make things worse. Tom had set this trap perfectly. Dylan's confusion about the secret house would sound like evidence of coaching to a CPS worker who didn't know the full story. 20 minutes later, Amanda returned to the living room while Dylan stayed in the kitchen with Deputy Martinez. Her expression was troubled. Mrs. Bradley, I need to ask you directly, have you been encouraging Dylan to gather information about his father's living arrangements or financial situation? No. Dylan came to me upset because Tom's been telling him he's poor and hungry because of our divorce. I was trying to figure out why my son felt guilty about eating lunch while his father supposedly couldn't afford groceries. Amanda made notes. And the surveillance activities? Following your ex-husband, asking questions at his residence building? My face flushed. I was trying to verify whether Tom was actually struggling financially or manipulating Dylan's emotions. Which it turns out he. Mrs. Bradley, Amanda interrupted gently, regardless of your motivations, involving a child in adult financial disputes is harmful. Dylan is clearly confused and anxious about divided loyalties. She was right, but for all the wrong reasons. What happens now? We're recommending immediate family counseling and supervised visitation pending the court hearing tomorrow. Amanda closed her folder. Dylan will continue living here, but all visits with either parent will be monitored until we can sort out what's actually happening. Both parents. Tom's plan had backfired. He'd gotten me supervised, but he'd also gotten himself supervised. It was a Pyrrhic victory that might actually work in my favor. After they left, I called Diane in a panic. Tom called CPS on me. There's a hearing tomorrow, not Friday. I know. I just got the notification. Sarah, I need you to listen very carefully. Do not contact Tom. Do not go near his building. Do not do anything that could be construed as harassment. We're playing defense now. But what about the evidence I gathered? The Instagram posts, the real estate article? We'll present everything, but the focus has shifted. Now we have to prove you're not the problem while simultaneously proving Tom is. Diane paused. There is one silver lining, if Dylan really did see Tom's real apartment, and if he talks about it with a court-appointed supervisor. You think Dylan will tell them the truth? I think 7-year-olds have trouble maintaining lies, especially when they're as confused as Dylan clearly is. Diane's voice carried a note of hope. Tom may have just given us exactly what we needed, a neutral third party to witness Dylan's story firsthand. As I hung up, Dylan came back downstairs, looking exhausted despite the early hour. Mommy, did I say something wrong? The lady kept asking me about secrets in houses and I got confused. I knelt down and pulled him into a hug. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated when they should be simple. Are you and Daddy going to court because of me? The question broke my heart. We're going to court because we want to make sure you're safe and happy. That's what courts are for, to help families. Dylan pulled back to look at me. Mommy, can I tell the judge about Daddy's elevator house? The one Marcus said was our secret? Elevator house. My pulse quickened. Dylan had been in Tom's building after all. You can tell the judge anything you want to, baby. No more secrets, okay? The supervised visitation took place Thursday afternoon at the Family Services building downtown, a sterile room with cameras in every corner and a court-appointed monitor named Janet who looked like she'd seen every custody battle imaginable. Tom arrived exactly on time, carrying a Happy Meal bag and wearing his wounded father expression. Hey buddy. His voice was perfectly calibrated, warm but slightly sad. I brought your favorite. Dylan hesitated in the doorway, looking between Tom and Janet uncertainly. Are you in trouble too, Daddy? Sometimes grown-ups have to follow special rules to make sure everyone feels safe, Tom replied smoothly. It's nothing for you to worry about. I watched through the observation window as Tom unpacked chicken nuggets and apple slices, maintaining his poverty performance even under direct supervision. Janet took notes, documenting every interaction, every word. Daddy, Dylan said after a few minutes of picking at his food, why couldn't we go to your elevator house this weekend? I liked the big windows. Tom's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. What elevator house, buddy? The one where we watched the movie on the really big TV. With the fancy kitchen and the pretty bathroom. Dylan's voice was matter-of-fact, innocent. Marcus said it was our secret, but I don't like secrets anymore. Janet's pen stopped moving. In the observation room, I held my breath. Dylan, I think you might be confused, Tom said carefully. We watched movies at Marcus's apartment, remember? The small one with the little TV? No, Daddy. Dylan's voice carried that stubborn certainty only children possess. Marcus's house was small and had the broken chair. But your elevator house was really big and had the soft couch and the kitchen island where I ate cereal. Tom glanced toward the camera, then back at Dylan. Sometimes when we visit different places, they can get mixed up in our memory. I'm not mixed up. Dylan's voice rose, and he pushed away from the table. You said we couldn't tell Mommy about your real house because it would make her sad that she didn't get the nice one. But then Marcus said I couldn't tell anyone because it was a special secret. But secrets make my tummy hurt. Janet was writing furiously now. Through the intercom, I could hear Dylan's breathing getting rapid and shallow, the beginning of one of his anxiety spirals that had become so common over the past few months. Dylan, hey, calm down, Tom reached across the table, but Dylan pulled away. I don't want to keep secrets anymore. I want to tell the truth about the elevator that goes really high up in the window wall where you can see the whole city. Dylan was crying now, words tumbling out in a rush. And I want to tell about your blue car that's not the broken gray one, and about how you have 2 refrigerators, one with just McDonald's bags and one with real food. Tom's face had gone pale. Dylan, you're getting upset over nothing. Maybe we should. It's not nothing. Dylan stood up so fast his chair fell over. You told me mommy took all your money, but you have a fancy house and a nice car and Marcus has a uniform like a security guard and he knows all about the cameras. Janet stood up, moving toward Dylan with practiced calm. Dylan, sweetheart, take some deep breaths. You're doing great by telling the truth. No one's in trouble for talking about what they've seen. But Dylan was past listening, months of confusion and guilt finally erupting. I saved my lunch money for Daddy, but he doesn't need it. I felt bad about our nice house when Daddy has a nicer one. And I drew the wrong picture because I drew the pretend house instead of the real house. Tom made one last attempt at damage control. Janet, he's clearly having some kind of episode. This is exactly the kind of emotional instability his mother has been causing. Mr. Bradley, Janet's voice cut through his explanation like a blade. I think we're done for today. The session ended with Dylan in Janet's arms, still crying but no longer hyperventilating, while Tom sat frozen at the table surrounded by untouched Happy Meal containers. Through the observation window, I watched my ex-husband's carefully constructed deception crumble in real time. An hour later, Diane called with an update that changed everything. Judge Morrison wants to see all parties in chambers tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., before the scheduled hearing. Janet's preliminary report triggered an emergency review. Her voice was tight with barely controlled excitement. Sarah, they're launching a formal investigation into Tom's living situation and financial disclosures. What does that mean? It means Tom's about to face the one thing his type can't handle, real scrutiny from people with actual power. Friday morning at 8:47 a.m., I sat in the hallway outside Judge Morrison's chambers watching Tom pace like a caged animal. His usual composed demeanor had cracked overnight, his expensive shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and he kept checking his phone with increasing desperation. Diane arrived at 8:52 with a thick folder under her arm and a grim smile. How are you holding up? Terrified, I admitted. What if Tom finds a way to spin this? He's been 3 steps ahead of me this entire time. Not anymore. Janet's full report came in at midnight. Diane opened her folder slightly, giving me a glimpse of official letterhead and highlighted sections. Dylan's statements were so specific that Child Services requested an immediate inspection of both residences Tom claims to use. My stomach clenched. They went to his apartment? Apartments, plural. They found Marcus's studio unit, the one Tom's been using as his poverty set piece. Futon with McDonald's bags, exactly as Dylan described. But here's the interesting part, the lease is in Marcus's name, but the utility bills show almost no usage for the past 4 months. It's essentially a stage. And the real apartment? Unit 1847, Meridian Building. Diane's voice dropped to a whisper. Sarah, you didn't see the half of it. This place is a $4,200 a month luxury loft. Granite counters, stainless appliances, a 75-inch TV mounted on exposed brick walls. The works. I felt vindicated and sick at the same time. So Dylan was telling the truth about everything. Down to the window wall and the kitchen island where he ate cereal. CPS also found evidence Dylan had been there multiple times, his artwork stuck to the refrigerator, a booster seat tucked in a closet, kids' DVDs mixed in with Tom's collection. Diane's expression darkened. But that's not the worst part. Before she could continue, the chamber doors opened and a bailiff gestured us inside. Judge Morrison's chambers were smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled walls lined with law books, an American flag in the corner, and a massive desk where a woman in her 60s sat reviewing documents with laser focus. Tom's lawyer, David Pierce, was already seated at a small conference table looking like he'd aged 10 years since yesterday. Tom slouched beside him, no longer bothering with his wounded father act. Be seated, Judge Morrison said without looking up. Mr. Pierce, I've reviewed the Child Services report regarding your client's living arrangements. I'm particularly interested in the financial disclosures he submitted during the original custody proceedings. Pierce shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, my client has been fully compliant with all court orders regarding. Has he? Judge Morrison finally looked up, her gray eyes sharp as steel. Because according to this report, Mr. Bradley has been maintaining a $4,200 monthly rental while claiming financial hardship necessitated the modest child support agreement. Tom straightened, finding his voice. Your Honor, the apartment is a recent development. I've been saving money by living modestly, and only recently was able to afford better accommodations. Judge Morrison picked up another document. The lease began November 1st, Mr. Bradley. Your divorce was finalized October 15th. Are you telling this court you saved $4,200 plus security deposits in 2 weeks while paying child support and legal fees? The math was impossible, and everyone in the room knew it. Tom's face flushed red. Your Honor, I had some assistance from family members. Family members who apparently also helped you maintain a second residence specifically for deceiving your 7-year-old son? Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen water. Mr. Bradley, I've been presiding over family court for 18 years. I've seen manipulation, I've seen financial hiding, but I have never seen someone weaponize their own child's empathy to this degree. Pierce jumped in. Your Honor, if my client made errors in judgment regarding how to present his circumstances to a young child. Errors in judgment? Judge Morrison stood up, her small frame radiating authority. Mr. Pierce, your client systematically convinced a 7-year-old that his mother was responsible for his father's poverty and hunger. He enlisted a third party to maintain an elaborate deception involving fake living spaces and manufactured hardship. He then had the audacity to accuse the child's mother of parental alienation when she discovered the truth. I felt tears threatening and bit the inside of my cheek to stay composed. This was really happening. Someone with power was finally seeing through Tom's manipulation. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, Mr. Bradley's financial disclosure forms list monthly expenses of $2,800, claiming financial hardship. The Meridian Building lease alone exceeds that amount, suggesting either perjury in his court filings or additional undisclosed income. Tom's lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear, but Tom shook his head stubbornly. Your Honor, I resent the implication that providing my son with age-appropriate information about our family's financial situation constitutes psychological manipulation. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Morrison sat back down slowly, like a predator settling in for the kill. Age-appropriate information, Mr. Bradley? Is that what you call convincing a 7-year-old to save his lunch money for his supposedly hungry father? Tom's face went ashen. He hadn't known about the lunch money. That wasn't. He stammered, then fell silent as the full weight of what he'd done to Dylan finally hit him. Judge Morrison opened another folder. There's more, Mr. Bradley. Child Services interviewed your building's security supervisor, Marcus Delgado. Interesting conversation. Pierce leaned forward urgently. Your Honor, we weren't notified that Mr. Delgado would be questioned. Mr. Delgado volunteered information when investigators arrived at the Meridian building yesterday evening. Judge Morrison pulled out a typed statement. According to his testimony, you approached him in October requesting assistance with what you called a custody situation. You paid him $500 monthly to allow you access to his studio apartment for weekend visits with your son. My hands clenched in my lap. $500 a month for Tom's poverty theater, almost 2/3 of what he paid in child support. Mr. Delgado also states that you specifically instructed him to tell Dylan that discussing your living arrangements would hurt Mommy's feelings and later upgraded that to calling it a special secret. He became uncomfortable with the arrangement after Dylan began asking him questions about lying to judges. Tom shot to his feet. That's not how it happened. Marcus is trying to cover his own. Sit down, Mr. Bradley. Judge Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. Mr. Delgado has provided receipts for your monthly payments, text messages discussing the arrangement, and security footage showing you bringing Dylan to his unit while maintaining your own residence 18 floors above. The room spun slightly as the full scope of Tom's deception became clear. He hadn't just hidden his real lifestyle, he'd created an entire parallel reality for Dylan, complete with a paid accomplice and documentary evidence of the conspiracy. Your Honor, Diane spoke for the first time. We'd also like to submit evidence of Mr. Bradley's actual lifestyle during the period he was claiming financial hardship to his son. She slid a tablet across the table showing Tom's Instagram account. Judge Morrison scrolled through the photos, expensive restaurants, craft cocktails, what looked like a weekend trip to Chicago based on the skyline shots. These were posted during the same time period Dylan was worried about his father being hungry, Your Honor. The restaurant in this photo charges $45 for entrees. Tom's lawyer grabbed his arm as he started to stand again. Tom, don't say another word. But Tom was past listening to legal advice. Your Honor, those posts were from business dinners, networking events. I have to maintain professional appearances even when struggling financially. Dylan didn't need to know about your $89,000 salary at Morrison and Associates? Judge Morrison consulted another document. Because that's what your employer reported to Child Services yesterday. Hardly struggling, Mr. Bradley. $89,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Tom had been claiming poverty on a salary that was nearly double what I made as a nurse. The child support calculation had been based on the artificially low income he'd reported during divorce proceedings. We're also concerned about the psychological evaluation Mr. Bradley arranged without Ms. Bradley's knowledge or consent, Judge Morrison continued. Dr. Michael Reeves has since clarified that he was hired to provide a theoretical assessment of parental alienation symptoms, not to evaluate Dylan specifically. His report was presented to Child Services as if it were a clinical diagnosis of the child. Pierce was furiously scribbling notes, probably calculating how many ethics violations his client had racked up in the past 5 minutes. Finally, there's the matter of Mr. Bradley's attempt to have Ms. Bradley's visitation supervised while concealing his own deceptive practices. Judge Morrison closed the folder with a sharp snap. This represents a level of manipulation and bad faith that goes far beyond typical custody disputes. Tom slumped in his chair, the fight finally going out of him. For the first time since our divorce, he looked smaller somehow, like the elaborate persona he'd constructed was finally collapsing under its own weight. Your Honor, I found my voice, surprising myself. I just want my son to stop feeling guilty for things that aren't his fault. Judge Morrison's expression softened slightly when she looked at me. Mrs. Bradley, I think we can arrange that. Judge Morrison leaned back in her chair, studying Tom with the kind of clinical detachment I'd seen doctors use when delivering terminal diagnoses. Mr. Bradley, here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, your custody arrangement is suspended pending a full psychological evaluation of Dylan to assess the damage from your creative parenting approach. Tom's head snapped up. You can't just take away my rights based on. I can and I am. Judge Morrison's voice cut through his protest like a scalpel. Your visitation will resume only under supervised conditions, and only after you complete a court-mandated psychological evaluation and parenting classes focused on age-appropriate communication. Pierce frantically whispered something in Tom's ear, but Judge Morrison wasn't finished. Furthermore, given the discrepancies between your reported income and actual lifestyle, this court is ordering a complete financial audit. The child support calculation will be recalculated based on your true earnings, retroactive to the original filing date. My breath caught. Retroactive meant Tom would owe thousands in back support, money that could go into Dylan's college fund instead of funding his luxury lifestyle. And Mr. Bradley? If this investigation reveals you've been hiding additional assets or income streams, you'll be facing contempt charges along with possible perjury prosecution. Tom finally found his voice, but it came out strangled. Your Honor, I understand you're upset about the living arrangement confusion, but surely we can work out a modified schedule that. Living arrangement confusion? Judge Morrison stood up again, her composure cracking slightly. Mr. Bradley, you traumatized your own son to avoid paying appropriate child support. Dylan has been in counseling since Tuesday, trying to understand why he felt responsible for his father's fictional poverty. The words hit me like ice water. He's been in counseling? Court-ordered emergency sessions with Dr. Amanda Foster, Judge Morrison explained, her tone gentling when she addressed me. She specializes in children who've experienced psychological manipulation. Dylan's been asking her if it's normal for children to have two daddies, the sad one who needs help and the secret one who lives in a fancy house. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying not to cry. My 7-year-old had been so confused by Tom's deception that he'd split his father into two separate people in his mind just to make sense of the contradictions. Dr. Foster's preliminary assessment suggests Dylan will need ongoing therapy to rebuild his sense of truth and security, Judge Morrison continued. The cost of that therapy, Mr. Bradley, will come out of your recalculated support payments. Tom's face had gone gray. How long will the supervised visitation last? That depends entirely on you. Complete the evaluation, finish the parenting classes, demonstrate genuine understanding of the harm you've caused, and we'll revisit the arrangement in 6 months. Judge Morrison gathered her papers. Oh, and Mr. Bradley? Your friend Marcus Delgado has been terminated from his position at the Meridian building. Conspiracy to defraud the family court system tends to be a career-limiting move. Pierce stood up quickly. Your Honor, we'd like to request a brief recess to discuss. Denied. This hearing is concluded. Judge Morrison looked directly at Tom. Mr. Bradley, I strongly suggest you use the next 6 months to reflect on the difference between being Dylan's father and being Dylan's protector. Because right now, your son needs protection from you. As we filed out of the chambers, Tom grabbed my arm in the hallway. His expensive cologne couldn't mask the smell of desperation. Sarah, this is insane. We can work this out between ourselves, can't we? Dylan loves me. He'll be devastated if he can't see me normally. I pulled my arm free, looking at this man I'd once loved and seeing a stranger. Tom, Dylan drew a picture of himself torn between 2 houses with question marks all around him. He's been saving his lunch money for months because you convinced him you were starving. How is that love? I was protecting him from adult complexities. You were using him. The words came out harder than I'd intended, but they felt true. And now maybe, finally, someone's going to protect him from you. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same family services building, but everything felt different. Dylan sat beside me in the waiting room, swinging his legs and humming, actually humming, while he colored in a book Dr. Foster had given him about families and feelings. Mommy, is Daddy going to be different now? He asked without looking up from his drawing of a house with normal-sized windows and a front door painted bright blue. I think so, sweetheart. He's been working really hard to understand how to be a better daddy. And Tom had been working hard, though I suspected it was more about avoiding jail time than genuine remorse. The financial audit had uncovered $47,000 in hidden income from freelance consulting work, plus a secret savings account with $23,000, money that should have been factored into child support from the beginning. The recalculated payments now totaled $1,847 monthly, more than double what he'd been paying. Dr. Foster emerged from her office with a warm smile. Dylan, how are you feeling about today? Good, I think. My tummy doesn't hurt anymore when I think about Daddy. Dylan set down his crayon and looked up at her with those serious blue eyes. Dr. Foster, do you think Daddy really understands now that lying to kids is wrong? What do you think, Dylan? I think he's trying. He wrote me a letter that said he was sorry for making me keep secrets and that none of the divorce stuff was my fault. Dylan's voice got stronger as he spoke. And he said he was going to tell me the truth from now on, even if it's complicated grown-up truth. The letter had been part of Tom's court-mandated therapy assignments, taking full responsibility for the psychological manipulation without making excuses or blaming me. It had taken him 4 drafts to write something Dr. Foster deemed appropriate for a 7-year-old to read. Tom appeared at the end of the hallway, walking slowly with Janet, the supervised visitation monitor. He looked different, thinner, older, wearing clothes that actually looked like they came from a regular store instead of a magazine. When he saw Dylan, his face lit up with what looked like genuine happiness for the first time in months. Hey buddy, Tom said softly, kneeling down to Dylan's level. Ready to hang out for a while? Dylan nodded, but instead of running to his father like he used to, he walked over deliberately and extended his hand for a handshake. Hi Daddy. Are we going somewhere real today? Tom's face flushed, but he shook Dylan's small hand seriously. Yes. I thought we could go to the park and then get ice cream. Real ice cream, not McDonald's. Can we talk about your real house today? I want to understand why you thought you needed to have a pretend house for me. Tom glanced at Janet, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Dylan. We can talk about anything you want to know. No more secrets, remember? As I watched them walk down the hall together, Tom answering Dylan's questions about honesty and feelings while Dylan listened with the careful attention of a child learning to trust again, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year. Relief. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane, final audit results in. Total recovery including penalties, $73,847. College fund looking good. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was Dylan's laugh echoing from the activity room, bright and unguarded, the sound of a little boy who no longer carried the weight of his parents' choices on his 7-year-old shoulders. For the first time since that March evening when Dylan asked, do all families do this? I could finally answer him honestly, no, sweetheart. Families are supposed to protect each other, not use each other. And now we both know the difference.